Good evening and welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm your host, John Ronan, and during these half-hour interviews I'll be talking to writers about their craft, their ambitions, their careers in writing. Those careers might be in poetry, they might be in fiction, they might be in nonfiction, they might be in advertising copywriting. We plan to cast a very wide net. We'll be sharing information with you, of course, but we hope to have a good time doing it. We'll try to make the program fast-paced and interesting and open to your comments as well. If you have ideas for us here at the Writer's Block, or if you'd like to be on the Writer's Block, watch for our address after the program. Tonight, actually, we have 3 guests, each of them a winner in the recent Young Writers Short Story Contest, which was a competition run by the Newspapers in Education program of the Essex County newspapers. The first of our 3 winners is Deidre Waz. Besides writing short stories, Deidre has also written music and arts reviews, and in the course of her journalism career, she's interviewed such celebrities as Herb Philbrick, the author of I Led 3 Lives, the musician Paul Winter, and Dennis Miller of Saturday Night Live. She's currently a senior at the Waring School in Beverly. The short story which she won with was titled Francine. Our second guest is also a senior. He attends St. John's Prep in Danvers, and his writing, he says, is often inspired by unusual activities, such as trying out for game shows, and he told me before our show that he's recently tried out for Jeopardy! He writes for the student newspaper at St. John's, the Eagle, and he also writes for Mental Blocks, the literary publication at St. John's. He has tried many different genres and styles, but his favorite topic is a sort of Twilight Zone motif, a science fiction motif, and he lists his favorite authors as Ray Bradbury, Douglas Adams, and Philip K. Dick. The short story that Tom won with was The Design Bureau. Our third guest is Lizabeth Kirk. She also is a senior in high school. She attends Newburyport High School. She too, like our other guests, is 17 years old. She is a co-editor of the school's literary magazine, The Record, and in her sophomore year, way back 3 years ago, she started her own literary section in the school's newspaper, The Masthead. Her literary section is called Lizabeth's Literary Corner. She plans to go to college and major in creative writing, wants to continue to write short stories and novels as well. The short story that Lizabeth won with was titled, excuse me, The Orange Table. Let's go over now and say hello to our guests. Hello, guests. How are you?
Very good.
For our audience, Lizabeth is on my left. Tom Studley is in the center, and Deidre Waz is on the audience's right. Did I say Studley correct in the introduction?
Yes.
Oh, good. Thank you. I want to show the audience briefly the North Shore magazine issue which announced your 3 winning short stories. Both Lizabeth and Deidre and Tom were all on the cover. And can I show this if I hold it very still? I'll hold it as still as I can. Lizabeth is reading, what is the title of the book you're reading in the picture?
I have no idea.
The Corpse Had a Familiar Face, Lizabeth is reading. Deidre is reading 1,000 Days, the book on the Kennedy presidency, and Tom, very literarily, is reading Moby Dick. Is that your favorite book, Tom?
By no means.
No, by no means. I want to start out asking a basic question that has to do with the purpose of the program. One of the reasons for the Writer's Block is to encourage reading and writing as hobbies, as pleasures, as careers in any way, and maybe to slow down the United States rollicking ride towards third world education status. One of the big problems in our education system is that people don't like to write, they don't like to read. You 3 do, obviously. I'd like to know why. Why don't I start out with Lizabeth? Why do you like to read and write? Where did that come from?
Well, I probably like to read because my mother and dad always read with me. I mean, that's something that started like before I could walk, probably. And so I love to read, and I write to express myself, I suppose. It's where it started. And now when I'm more aware of things, I also write to present some sort of situation or a problem.
The source then is way, way back in family, being read to and reading early, seeing the alphabet around as a part of your world.
Yeah, reading just, it was something that was very special, and it just went from there, I guess.
I'll do ladies first, forgive me, Tom.
All right.
I'll get a letter on sexism for this, but Deidre, can you answer the same question? Why do you read and write?
I was always one to ask for journals for Christmas, and I'd always start one, and I'd, get a couple days into it, and then I'd give up.
Blank journals?
Yeah, blank journals. And I started that every year, and it's become a matter of habit, and that really got me started because it was something I'd sit down and I'd do every day, and I'd have, even if I wrote, nothing happened today. But that started me, and I'd go to pajama story hours, and
Pajama story hours?
Yep.
I hadn't heard the term before, but it sounds good.
Ipswich Public Library.
Ah.
Yeah, and I'd listen to the stories, and I'd think, well, I would have done that differently. And, then my mom said, well, why don't you start writing it down? So I did.
So you did. Good. So it started for you early as well.
Yeah.
With blank
journals.
The white page is frightening, isn't it? Tom, the same question. Where does it come from, the enjoyment of reading and writing, leaving out Moby Dick?
Well, as far as reading goes, I think my situation was similar to Elizabeth's in that my parents read to me from a very early age. I particularly remember The Chronicles of Narnia and a few other books that I really liked that my parents would read to me before I went to sleep at night or really whenever they had free time. As far as writing goes, in 5th grade, I had a teacher who encouraged us to write every week. And she'd have us write little stories or poems, things of that nature. And she's the one who really taught me that if you have an idea, you should write it down and express it, and it might just turn out to be a good one.
So a 5th grade teacher. Who was that?
Miss Silk.
Miss Silk. And that was in?
This was back in Lowell.
Ipswich, Lowell. So a teacher was significant as well. I've often heard that reading to children is very important. I guess we've got some evidence here that it is. That's good. I want to go from a general question now to a specific question. Where you get your ideas now. I read your short story, The Design Bureau, which concerns the creation of universes. Where did you get that idea?
Well, my original idea came from Douglas Adams' novel, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in which there's a character who designs coastlines for planets. And he's part of a giant company that designs custom-made planets. And I took that and took it a step further, saying, what if there is a sort of research and development department in heaven where they actually turn out different universes? So I took that concept, and eventually the character of Kilroy, who's the main character in the story, the man who designs the universe, came about. And it just grew from that.
So the introduction was absolutely accurate. You're like the Twilight Zone sort of motif.
Yes.
If you watched all the Twilight Zone episodes?
I watched the new series. I haven't seen very many of the old series episodes.
With Rod.
Rod Serling, yeah.
Poor Rod, he's gone. He's probably appears mysteriously sometime. Deidre, Tom was talking about the Design Bureau. Your story was Francine. I was interested when I read Francine about the sources that you used, because to understand Francine you have to sort of have a basic background in American horror flicks. Do you see a lot of horror flicks?
No, not at all. Francine is really a composite character. It goes back to 5th grade. The story takes place in 5th grade. It's about two friends, and this one girl, Kate, is given the job of befriending Francine, and Francine's a little bit eccentric. She likes to call herself eccentric. She reads about the witches of the Middle Ages. She has all these ideas about curses, and she's really just a composite character. I got her from being in 5th grade, being around a lot of people, and putting a lot of ideas together. I don't watch horror movies.
Oh, that stuck in my mind because the Amityville Horror is mentioned in there, and I think
Actually,
Francine claims that her bed spins at one point.
Yeah. I didn't watch, in 5th grade I did see a second of that on the news or on something, on some show, and it scared me for months. I slept with my bedroom door open with the lights on. It really did. It scared me. But other than that, I'm not an avid horror flick watcher.
Good horror flicks are pretty scary. I think it's almost like a legal drug. Some people have to go to these horror flicks for rushes constantly.
Yeah.
You didn't write a horror flick. You wrote about something more familial, something very personal, an orange table. The title was The Orange Table, and the subject is an orange table. Where did that come from?
Well, actually, I was writing about an orange table in study hall. But
As an assignment?
well,
or?
no, I was just sitting there, and I was bored, and I wanted to write something, and I wanted to do like a exercise in description, because that's what we do a lot in our creative writing class. And what came out was The Orange Table, which was about a little girl living in an alcoholic family. And the whole situation is described through the metaphor of using a table to represent the little girl.
And she grows up through the story. She's married and...
Well, she doesn't, that
to have a
sort of
baby?
comes at the end. Most of it is about her life as during like a 1-year period, sort of, as a child. And then it fast forwards into how she dealt with it in her life as she became an adult. That just came, some things I drew from personal experience, and other things I drew because both my parents are psychologists, and I hear a lot about things like that. It's something that's very familiar with and easy to latch
a lot
on
of
to.
orange table conversations.
Yeah.
Yes,
So-
I understood. Yeah, I understood the symbolism. An artifact in the family often is another character in the family. So good ideas can come out of study hall. I'm surprised.
It doesn't happen very often.
That's,
But
that's the big revelation for me, study hall. Tom touched on something I wanted to ask, and he got ahead of me. So let me ask Lizbeth first. Are there any teachers that you remember, or if you want to boost your grades this semester, are there any teachers that you have now who have influenced you in writing and reading?
Probably the 2 teachers that come to mind. One was in 8th grade. Her name was Mrs. O'Neill. And I didn't really start writing seriously until 7th grade. I mean, I'd done sort of blank journals, but I never really got anywhere with it until 7th or 8th grade. And in 8th grade, I had Mrs. O'Neill, and she gave me encouragement, which is what I needed. She didn't do any critiquing, which I probably couldn't have dealt with at that point, but she gave lots of encouragement, which was helpful. And in sophomore year, I had Mrs. Szabo.
Mrs.
Szabo?
Szabo?
Yeah. And I had her for English and creative writing as well.
She was good.
And she was incredible. She just helped me a lot. She critiqued me. I mean, I'm still friends with her now, so.
She's still at the high school?
Yeah.
I know critiquing is a very difficult and almost an artistic process from a teacher's point of view with younger writers, because you want to encourage, but you want to point out also.
Yeah.
Deidre, do you have or have you had a teacher or teachers?
Yeah, I think pretty much a lot of my teachers in the Winthrop School, the elementary school in Ipswich, they were really supportive, especially Mrs. Valerio. That's what I remember. I was really triggered. That was 5th grade. I really wanted to write in 5th grade, and she gave me the incentive to write. We did kind of like portfolio pieces, and we were given a theme to write on, and I don't know, she really opened my eyes with she shared writing with me. She shared her writing with me.
What level was she? I'm sorry.
5th grade.
5th grade.
And then since I've been at Waring, since the 7th grade, one teacher, Dom, we call our teachers by our first names at Waring, he's been very helpful. And the style of the classes at Waring, we all sit around and we share journal pieces with each other. So we get our peers' critiques too. And Dom has been great. He's really encouraged me.
Good. Get them a copy of the tape. Get all these great Christmas presents for these teachers. Tom, you mentioned Mrs. Silk or Miss Silk.
Miss Silk.
Anybody else?
Well, I think all of my teachers, to some extent, have influenced me. Mrs. McGovern taught me to memorize all the prepositions. And
Was that fun?
it was
How much
a
fun? I don't want to
blast.
be negative. How much fun was that on
It
a
was
scale of
lots
1
of
to
fun.
10? Lots of fun.
I think over the past few years, the most influential teacher has been Mrs. Singer, my English teacher from last year, who just really went out of her way to encourage my writing. She was the one who encouraged me to enter in the Young Writers Competition, as well as for a National Council of English Teachers award, which I ended up receiving.
Good.
And she's just been very helpful, and I appreciate it quite a bit.
Good. I teach as well, so I want to give teachers some time in here. Whom, Deidre, do you read?
I've gotten into my beatnik kick right now. I've been reading a lot of Kerouac, Ferlinghetti, Ginsberg. I don't know what intrigues me, but something really...
You like Kerouac?
I love Kerouac.
He's from
And I
your
love Ferlinghetti.
hometown,
That's right.
Lowell.
Yeah.
All right, do you know of Truman Capote's, I believe it's Truman Capote's
That's not writing,
criticism?
that's typewriting.
Yes. But that doesn't daunt you at all?
No. No, I like the feel. I mean, I've been traveling. I haven't traveled the same way Kerouac did, obviously. I didn't just get up and leave, but I really admire his description, his honesty, his forthrightness with his writing, and just the way it flows so easily. I mean, obviously.
that.
But
Imagine what he could have done with computers.
Imagine. And that whole generation.
Cassidy and
Yeah.
all his buddies.
Yeah.
Lizbeth, whom do you read?
Well, I don't particularly read any great writers. I just like to go to a bookstore and buy books. I tend to go for mysteries. I like K.K. Beck.
I'm not familiar with K.K. Beck.
I don't know
Who-
whether
who
she's
is-
that famous or anything.
Is she an American?
Yeah. She started out in some job as like a clerical worker or something like that, and turned to writing as a hobby, and eventually, but she's written like 6 books.
So it's no accident then you're reading The Corpse Had a Familiar Face?
Actually,
on the magazine?
I picked that one because I do like mysteries. That's what I read mostly for pleasure. I mean, in school, there are certain authors that I like, but I don't particularly follow an author.
Can you
avidly.
think offhand of anybody else besides Beck?
I really liked Steinbeck. We've done some work on him. And I don't know.
Anybody old-time mysteries? Christie or...
I like the Sherlock Holmes series.
Do you?
Yeah, I go for them. I like the characters a lot. They're sort of familiar. People you could sit down and talk with, you know.
Tom, you mentioned in your introduction that you like Ray Bradbury and Douglas Adams. You mentioned him again. Who else?
Well, I read virtually anything I can get my hands on. I tend to read a couple of books every week. And sometimes there'll be books I've read previously, maybe a couple of years ago, that I wanted to reread. Other times I'll just go to the library and look through shelves and see if there's something by an author I know or by an author I don't know that looks interesting.
On fiction or any subject?
Mostly fiction. I did read one of Mikhail Gorbachev's books once. But
What do you think of Mikhail as an author?
kind of heavy-handed.
Translation's always difficult.
Mostly I stick to mysteries, science fiction, sometimes things like James Bond novels or Tom Clancy's novels. But we also do a lot of some of the more, quote, great writers for school, and some of them I've quite liked.
We're going to get back to Moby Dick here.
No, John
No?
Gardner.
No,
mostly.
John Gardner.
We just finished Grendel, which was really excellent.
Yes, yes, it is. He was a wonderful writer. he liked motorcycles too much, though, unfortunately. I mentioned, I think, in 1 or 2 introductions, what some of your future plans are. Are you all going to become writing majors in school, English majors, creative writing majors, journalism majors, or do you think you might wind up being a geology major and keep up writing on the side? Tom?
Well, I'm planning on doing a double major, hopefully, in engineering and writing. I know, ideally, I suppose I see myself as an absent-minded professor writing on the side.
You want to teach?
Yes, I'd like to teach. Something that, it's an urge that comes and goes. And sometimes I think I'd like to be a physicist. Sometimes I think I'd just like to write full-time. It really depends on my mood.
Are there any scientists, any physicists who write, whom you admire?
Not that I know of. I haven't really looked at the field as far as physicists who have gone on to write great novels.
Carl Sagan, perhaps, or...
Well, Isaac Asimov, I suppose.
Isaac Asimov.
You could say is a scientist, or Robert Heinlein.
Michael Crichton, I think, is a MD.
I really don't. It's not something I've looked at very much. I suppose I'd like to, as I said before, have a career, say, as an engineer, but keep up writing on the side. And I'd also like to write through college as well.
Deidre, are you going to be a pure English person, or
I think so.
Pure language person in college?
Yeah, I think writing is where I'm headed, whether that be journalism, script writing, creative writing. I'm not sure. I want to experiment with a bunch of things, but I think I'll pretty much stay in English.
English.
Yeah.
Do you have any...
Or communications.
Minor ideas?
Music, perhaps. I play the violin, and yeah, I like playing a lot.
You do?
Yeah.
Good. I know a lot of kids who don't. Lisbeth, what are you going to be in English? I think you said you do intend to go into creative writing. You want
definitely.
that to be your major and go
Yeah,
straight forward?
I mean, the ideal would be to be able to be a professional writer and do that as a living. But one never really can count on that.
It's a tough market.
Yeah. But that's what I plan to do in college. When I go out, I don't know for sure, but I think I'd like to join the Peace Corps for a couple of years because I want to travel. And I think those kinds of experiences would be valuable, especially in the writing field. And I want to live in England for a couple of years, but I don't know anything else.
Is that because of England's literary background and
Partly.
You studied a great deal about English literature?
Mostly it's because I went this summer for 10 days with my mother, and I had an incredible experience. I love the culture, I love the people, the landscape. It just really hit home, and I'd like to live there for a while. I wouldn't want to live there forever because I'd feel too isolated, but I do want to live there at some point.
I feel the same way about London anyway. I rarely get outside of London, and I'm about to leave to see some plays in London for a couple of weeks. It's a nice place to be. What are you three working on now? Lisbeth, what are you study hall ideas?
Well, for the school newspaper, the Masthead, I have to put out a story once a month. So I have a short story out every month. And I'm also just writing short stories along with that, which I'm working with a mentor. It's a program our school calls Independent Study, in which you pick a local writer, someone who is in that field which you're interested in. Doesn't necessarily have to be writing. And they mentor you for semester or the entire year, whatever.
You work with someone down in Newburyport?
Yeah.
Who's that?
Well, this year I'm working with Mr. Bresnahan, and we're still tentative about this. But last year I worked with a professor up at Emerson College, Joe Herka. And I also met a few times with, my God, Andre Dubus, who he's well known for his short stories.
Yes.
And so that's been going really well. I basically just do writing.
Good, so you're busy.
Yeah.
Tom, what are you working on?
I'm not working on anything at the moment. I tend to work in cycles. I'll have periods where I'll write off 2 or 3 essays and a short story, and I'll have other times when I just can't do anything, either because of time constraints with school or because I just don't have any ideas at the moment that are working out. What I try to do is if I get an idea that might work in a story, like Kilroy, the man who designs universes, I try to write that down on the margin of my notebook or something like that, and as I'm flipping through the notes to study for a test, I'll notice that, and then I'll go back and say, wasn't a bad idea, I'll try writing that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Over the last few months, I've written a few personal essays and a few short stories. Probably the best of them was a essay about the people who walk through subway stations.
The people, the beggars, the homeless?
No, just different kinds of people, businessmen
traveling
rushing through, and the grandmothers coming out of Jordan Marsh, that sort of thing.
Excuse me, I just got the high sign. We have 1 minute left. Can you
really?
answer that question very briefly? 10 words or less.
I've been freelancing for various publications, and I'm also working on my second novel.
Excellent.
Not bad.
I want to thank
In a
you all,
nutshell.
Deidre, Tom, Elizabeth, for being with us on the Writer's Block. I appreciated your time. I'd like to thank you as well and our TV audience for being with us this evening on the Writer's Block. If you've learned something about writing and enjoyed talking to our younger guests this evening, then our show has been a great success. Between now and next time, your assignment is to read their short stories, listen to a little Lyle Lovett, and we'll see you next time on the Writer's Block. Good night.